Doing today? Welcome back to my channel. My name's Carpo. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about changing your mind and start off by kind of giving a synopsis or a basic summary of what I mean by changing your mind. Throughout our lives, we're consistently learning new things, and the hope is that as we get older and we grow and we gain in wisdom, that we can change our opinion on things that we once believed. You can get something as rudimentary as the Easter Bunny or, the Tooth Fairy or Santa. But you can move that, into many different larger beliefs that we might carry around longer. For example, a person who was raised religious, then when they become an adult, decide to leave the church and they have a new perspective on what's real and what's true to them. Meanwhile, many other people already felt that way, and there will be people that he left behind which still feel strongly a different way. This is human nature. We all fit in our tribes because the tribes are what give us comfort and solace. Now, this is, I think, a crucial thing that we're overlooking right now in society. We're talking about abandoning tribalism because it's a problem, and I totally understand that. Here's where the issue arises, is when we are tribal in politics. We're tribal about things we don't even understand. I know how little time we all have in our daily day-to-day activities. And even if you're a researcher and that's all you do, there's only so much you can research about the ins and outs of politics and the millions of books in the Library of Congress and the impossible task of trying to keep up with who believes what and why do they believe it, and is that belief affecting us, and if so, can these things benefit or is it a risk to society? It's only after the fact that we see things falling apart that we realize, whoops, we were maybe wrong. Some of these things can be big issues. Others can be very small and maybe go unseen. But I've found that people do want to change their opinions only when they suit them and change their views only when it's comfortable because we want to fit into our tribes. Now, tribes are important, but I'm talking about tribes of people who care about one another, tribes that stick together and protect one another. It could even be your local neighborhood area, or the people in your town, or, a coalition that you're a member of. These are your tribe members, and we might even be members of several different tribes, right? We have our family tribe, our friend tribe, our, acquaintances, and our workplace is kind of a tribe. But these are different. These aren't things we need to abandon. We do need to agree on certain principles, but instead of arguing about what is right and what is true and saying, hey, I no longer believe in the Easter Bunny, and a person may say, well, I do, and they could discuss it and say what the evidence is and whether or not this is something they should pursue further. The original argument, as Aristotle, the Aristotelian argument was more about getting to the bottom of what's true, so both people gain perspective, not one person being right, which is what we seem to have right now. And this is pushed on the people by people who don't know better. I should say people who do know better, convincing us that we don't know better and saying, look, you people need to listen to what you're told, do what you're told, and follow the rules, Be a team player and do the right thing, whether it be a reaction to the pandemic or it be a financial burden that people toll, like the idea of rising gas prices. Well, it's just what we do, Well, really, is it? Well, yeah, it's what the poor people do. People who can't afford to get to work, the wealthy don't worry about those things. And so anyway, the delusions are fed to the people to keep us distracted and arguing amongst ourselves about stupid things that really don't matter, such as which politician is in office, because as we can see, there are no real changes being made by any of these figureheads. So the truth is not always what we would want it to be, and I think that this is something that is what keeps us from seeing. It's not just the fact that we don't want to admit that something's true, that we were wrong about. It's bigger than that because we don't want to be viewed by our tribe or our peers as being wishy-washy, right? Or changing our minds. Or as a politician called it, a flip-flopper, right? I'll never forget years ago when a politician was interviewed and the guy was trying to call him out, the interviewer, saying, well, you used to say that cannabis was all harmful, and, gave him this whole litany of things he'd said, and then says, Well, now you're saying that you support its research. Why? And he said, because I looked at it and I did more research. He said I was wrong. And that was that. He's like, I didn't realize the medical benefits. I'd finally looked into these things. Some people had brought it to my attention. You don't know what you don't know. And we argue more from ignorance or to appease constituents, as politicians do. Because of this, the media has really played on it and used this for decades. And it's really sad to see how many people actually believe what they see on the news as being the right way to see things. Yeah, sure, the story might really happen, but the way it's viewed through that lens is, fortunately, legacy media, these huge companies that have dominated the airwaves for so long, are dying. And it's happening so quickly. I think one of the greatest stories I've heard in the past few months is that CNN had invested all this money and time, $350 million, I think, something like that. Well over $300 million, starting CNN Plus, a paid $6 a month, whatever, subscription service. They expected to have millions of people join. Well, they had all this shit planned, and then the first week they canceled it and said basically it's only going to be on for a month. Like, it didn't even last a month. And they, I guess, only had 150,000 people sign up. And out of that, they had less than 10,000 people watching. This is the new streaming service, right, from CNN. The big question here, and the funny thing is, what are you offering? More BS news, from the same people? And it's just funny. It's just funny that the whole thing fell apart. So at any rate, this is key because it's not just about censorship, it's about omission and the way that many of these companies omit the other side of the argument. Because as I said, an argument requires 2 points, and you can disagree, but they want to just completely cut out the other argument. And both sides of the media have played this for years. I mean, for a while it's the right, then it's the left, and it goes back and forth on who's more vocal. It seems that it's these power struggles about how can we get more of the populace to listen to us, How can we sell more ad revenue? And all of that fell apart pretty quick for CNN, and I think even hopefully the rest of the news. But the thing is, we want to be informed is the point, and we don't know how to be informed on what's true. And so it's shame on the media for not covering the stories balanced and fair. And they have been the ones who have pushed the people into the center. I've always been a centrist person, but I do lean left. I mean, I tend to have liberal views, but I don't represent any of the liberal views I see in the young people today, the kind of shit people are trying to push on others, the ideas of the loudest voices. You'll find they're the ones that are pushing for censorship and speech. I have a major issue against censorship of speech. You may not want to hear it, and that's kind of tough shit. People need to thicken up their skin because we're living in a time where we need to protect language, because language is really the only thing that we have. It is, hands down, the first American right, the freedom of speech. And as I said, people have been pushed into the center, and nobody wants to be part of a debate because they don't want to be called out in front of somebody who may be more intelligent. So people omit speakers from their colleges now. We have colleges where people had used to learn to debate and welcome different ideas. They're keeping out people they don't want to hear. And that's really sad. It's pathetic, actually. It shows kind of a mental disease that's creeping through society, convincing people that if you want to be the good guy, then you have to believe A, B, or C. And it's a collective delusion and groupthink, but it's a different type. The collective delusions, the one I heard the best description there's this series I've been listening to on Big Think. It's a YouTube channel. And they have these little short, 4 or 5 minute videos every so often about the collective delusion series. And they were talking about this people, how the loudest voices are they're never the majority. The people who have to scream the loudest are usually the ones who have to scream loud because they have no one on their side, or very few people. And these would be the extreme, what some people would call like the social justice warriors, the extreme ones, which a few years ago I was like, so what? If a person wants to fight for justice, what's wrong with that? Now I understand, okay? I had to be informed on this to see how far people go and the extreme bullshit that people pull in the name of, equality, or, they want freedom, but they don't want freedom for your speech. And it just becomes a huge battle. And on that note, it was just an hour ago that Elon Musk bought Twitter. I'm not going to go into that one, but I'm going to have to ponder this, whether or not it's just another billionaire in charge of a speech platform. What happens when you talk bad about him, right? And that's the thing. People are tired of being censored, and they want to speak honestly. Because when you talk to people face to face, you find that people actually feel differently than they're expressing online. They will admit to you that they're afraid to really say their full feelings about what's going on in the world, or they're afraid to tell. And they're not bad thoughts. They're just thoughts about life, questions. Well, maybe men and women are different. Or what about trans, men becoming women and joining sports? Should we even be able to talk about these things? Of course we can. Because it's a societal issue. It's not whether they're a huge issue. They are blown out of proportion. But the fact that they're being talked about means that they're concerning to people. And so I feel like today, if you even bring up certain topics, you're not even allowed to talk about certain things because you're not one of that tribe. And I call that bullshit. I will never play that game, and I will always speak honestly and freely. But I do refrain from saying certain things or talking about certain things, because there's so much collective delusion and groupthink out there. And there's so much reprisal and hatred for people who get attacked online. It's just not worth it. Therefore, rational voices that are well respected, that would speak up on an issue, are afraid to do so because they don't believe their speech is protected, or at least that they will be attacked over and over verbally, if not threatened physically, for having a different opinion than someone else. And to anyone who threatens other people for having different opinions, you should really check yourself, because it doesn't prove you right. It proves that you haven't thought through how to have a good argument with the person and make your point. There are exceptions. There's always exceptions. But as I said, the loudest voices are not the majority, and that's why they have to be so loud. And the partisan bickering is always just a distraction. It's very rarely down to the good guys and the bad guys. People always want to make it sound like there's a right and a wrong, when sometimes there can be both rights or both wrongs. But it's more complicated than that. And it's embarrassing that in today's world, people want to make things so damn cut and dry. There's just people, good or bad, whatever you want to judge it as. But we know, and we all collectively agree on the really bad things, right? The abusers, things like that. There's nobody standing up for those people, very few, and they get shot down pretty quick. There is a collective truth that we can see where people do have values, but those values don't always extend to the way the media portrays it. And everything gets blown out of proportion because most people's lives are really pretty boring and simple. They're not complicated. We don't have constant oppression everywhere we go. Some people do, and it has happened throughout history, but it's always made to sound worse than it is. At any rate, I'm going to run out of space, and I guess my camera's out, so I got to go. Thanks for